Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? The next step. Tristan stirred the sickly green tea in his mug, watching the bag bob up and down in murky suspension. He took a sip, cringed, and grunted in disgust. Far from being satisfying, he thought it tasted like wet grass and regret. He sighed and left the break room, entering the office corridor and pressing the elevator button with the same tired resignation he'd applied to his third cup that morning. The mirrored elevator doors reflected a man worn thin, tired eyes, and a mouth set in a permanent downturn. He tried not to look at the strands of premature gray creeping over his ears. He took another sip of his matcha, forcing himself to swallow, trying not to think of how closely the drink resembled something he once scraped off the wheels of his lawnmower. Sighing heavily, Tristan glanced at his watch. He'd had back-to-back meetings all morning and hadn't felt needed for any of them, having so far only sat silently, taking notes and nodding as higher-ups talked in circles for an hour, while ultimately saying nothing. Just a few more years, he reminded himself for the millionth time. A few more years proving yourself, then you'll be promoted to manager, then director, then you'll have made it. He took another sip of matcha and grimaced, struggling between forcing himself to swallow or spitting it out. It was a few moments before he noticed the old man who had come to stand beside him, waiting for the elevator. The old man looked sideways at Tristan and grinned. Just switched to tea, eh? Tristan forced himself to finally swallow and nodded. Yeah. The old man chuckled and said, "That look on your face, oof! You're a coffee guy, am I right?" Tristan examined the old man's face. He was ancient, likely pushing 90. But he wasn't a senior executive or even on the board. Tristan had memorized all their faces. Not really in the mood to make small talk with some random old guy, Tristan just nodded. "Thought so," the old man continued conversationally. "Let me guess, it wasn't your idea." Tristan frowned down at the tea in his hand and said, "My girlfriend suggested it." "Ah, another young pup, just doing as he's told." The old man chuckled again. "It's a shame you don't know how to think for yourself." Tristan bristled slightly at the remark, but didn't want to cause a scene at work by telling this guy off. So he forced himself to remain silent by drinking more matcha. The old man looked sideways at him and shook his head in disappointment. "Nothing? Pity. I hoped you had more spine than that." Tristan turned to face the man, his brows pressing together as he clenched a fist. "What's your problem?" Tristan demanded angrily. The old man laughed. "That's more like it. I knew there was still someone alive in there." The old man poked Tristan in the chest and laughed again. Tristan sneered and turned back to the elevator, wondering just what the hell was taking the damn thing so long. "You'll be waiting a long time if you just stand here," the old man said. "Feel free to take the stairs," Tristan snapped. I don't mean the elevator, kid, the old man said, suddenly serious. Your goals, your dreams. I assume you have some. Let me tell you, no one ever got anywhere by just waiting. You gotta find it yourself. Yeah, well, no one's told me where else to look yet, so... Tristan replied coldly. And you're just waiting to be told, eh? Want the world to just hand you everything you want? That's the problem with you kids. You think your dreams just come true on their own? Tristan exhaled sharply, having had enough of being lectured by a stranger of no importance. He opened his mouth, ready to tell the old guy exactly what he thought. Then something was pressed into his chest. A folded sheet of paper, bronzed by time. Lucky for you, kid, the old man whispered conspiratorially. That's exactly how your world works today. What is this? Tristan asked suspiciously, his anger suddenly replaced with confusion. He carefully peeled back a corner of the folded paper. It looked like trash to him. He wondered if the old man was simply crazy. That, young blood, is a map, the old man said, pointing at the paper. A map to a priceless reward. I can tell by looking at you that you're not where you want to be in life. You follow that map, and your life will be forever changed. This is a joke, right? Tristan asked. You're giving me a treasure map? What is this, Uncharted? It's okay, young blood. The old man grinned. I didn't believe it first either, when a stranger handed me that thing. It took me 37 years to take it seriously. Wasted a lot of time. But if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. The intense sincerity with which the man spoke made Tristan uneasy, but at the same time he had felt a rush of excitement course through him. Even if the man was crazy, this was the most interesting thing that had ever happened to him, so why not play along? Okay then, Tristan began, slowly unfolding the supposed map, deciding to humor the man for now. What's this reward? And why didn't you take it yourself? No, boy, I did take it, the old man insisted. Everyone gets their own reward. That map you're holding will guide you to a place that exists on no other map. From there, it will show you the way through the maze. Maze? Tristan repeated, still not sure if he should be taking this seriously or not. Yes, or a labyrinth more like. The map will lead you to the center, where you can claim your personal reward. But there's a condition to claim it. You have to pay it forward. Tristan stared down at the map in his hands. It was so fragile, worn thin, and creased with countless folds. It felt like it was going to crumble to dust in his hands. The old man turned and began walking away, just as the elevator dinged to announce its arrival. What you do next is up to you, but take some free advice. Don't waste half your life wondering about it. Over the following days, Tristan kept telling himself the old man was crazy. A treasure map? Ridiculous. But a part of him was intrigued, even more so when he asked around the office for the old man, and no one seemed to have ever seen him. He couldn't really explain why he decided to listen to the old man in the end, but Tristan left his home and began his search. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He took all the vacation days he had, then took off. After weeks of travel, all doubts about the map vanished as he found the place it led to. Tristan stood in a forgotten valley as the sun began to fall behind the horizon, looking in awe at the towering dark walls before him. They stretched infinitely to the left and right of where he stood, fading into the dwindling light in the distance and even stretching into the darkening sky. An archway towered over Tristan, a gaping mouth that marked the entrance to this place. Tristan almost expected lightning to split the sky. How could this monolith go undiscovered? Who had built it and why? These questions and countless more swirled around Tristan's mind like a hurricane, but they didn't matter. Not when he was this close. He had doubted that this whole adventure would lead to anything, but there was no denying it now. Tristan turned the map over in his hands, searching the back and the corners for what to do next. But there was nothing. The old man had told him the map would also guide him to the center of the labyrinth, but Tristan saw nothing that would help him the rest of the way. "Find me!" a voice suddenly whispered in the wind. Tristan jumped so much he nearly tore the map in half. He turned on the spot and searched for whoever had spoken, but he was in an empty field. There wasn't another person in sight. "Find me!" the voice whispered again, more urgently this time. Tristan turned again as he realized where the voice was coming from. It was speaking from within the labyrinth, a voice born on the wind that breathed out of the labyrinth's depths. Swallowing his nerves, Tristan took a hesitant step into the labyrinth. The world exhaled. Everything fell silent. Glancing over his shoulder, Tristan's face paled in an instant. The massive archway he had just stepped through had vanished. Instead, he was staring at a section of wall made of flat, dark stones that towered overhead, disappearing into the sky. Tristan stumbled forward and pressed his hand against the wall, pressing hard and breathing fast. "No, no, no, no," Tristan muttered in a panic as he felt all around the wall, looking for a way to get back out, but to no avail. After a few minutes of fruitless efforts, Tristan sat down in the dirt with his back against the wall, wondering what he should do now. He took several slow, deep breaths and managed to ease his sense of panic. As he calmed down, he began to examine the area around him. There were 3 paths, leading left, right, and directly ahead of him. Each one stretched into shadows. Tristan looked down at the useless map in his hands. To his shock, the map had changed. The instructions that had been there, that had led him to the labyrinth's entrance, had gone. Now there was a detailed drawing of the labyrinth itself. As Tristan watched, he saw that the illustration was still growing, the black lines spreading as though sketched by numerous invisible hands. As Tristan watched in awe, the black ink filled the page until the full labyrinth was drawn out, an intricate spider's web with a large empty square at its center. "Find me," the voice whispered once more. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Tristan swallowed hard as he tried to wrap his head around what was happening, then nodded once as if he just convinced himself to continue. The map clearly marked the center of the labyrinth, and Tristan noticed tiny dots following the path to his left. Without another moment of hesitation, Tristan turned and followed the directions, moving quickly, but cautiously, into the hidden depths. As Tristan followed the map's instructions, he heard the grinding of stones frequently, and could swear that whenever he looked at the map, it had changed slightly. There was no way of knowing what the other halls contained, but he could hear things lurking in darkness, stomping and slithering out of sight. He was certain they could hear him too, maybe even smell him. He didn't want to think about what would happen if he wandered down the wrong path. There came a point, after hours of wandering, where Tristan's path split into 2 corridors. The map clearly told him to go right, but Tristan felt a strong pull to go left instead. He had no idea what was down that path. He had no reason to veer off the safe route and pursue whatever was down that way, but the desire was almost overwhelming. He took a single step to the left, staring wistfully into the darkness. "There's something incredible down there," he thought. Whatever strange force was calling to him felt as familiar as going home after a long time away. It called to him, Not in words, but in a way he could feel, like a thought he didn't remember having, a memory he'd never lived. But it was as dark as any other path, and utterly, deathly, silent. Despite this, Tristan could almost swear the air felt warmer down that path. Tristan took another step forward, dreaming of what wonders might be that way. "Find me," the voice whispered again, louder. Tristan snapped out of his dreamlike state. He turned and hurried along the path the map told him to go, already forgetting about the alluring alternative route that had called to him. Tristan lost track of how long he had been walking, though it felt like days. He rounded another bend and saw the infinitely large hall widen, revealing a bright silver light. Tristan gasped slightly as he realized this was the center of the labyrinth. He'd made it. Stumbling forward, Tristan fell to his knees on the grass before a raised platform that marked the center of the maze. Wiping the sweat from his eyes, Tristan glanced around, taking in his unremarkable surroundings. The only thing in the courtyard to see was the platform in front of him and the tall, shining object standing atop it. The light seemed to emanate from the object itself. It had an ornate frame made of silver, which twinkled enticingly. The frame held a simple, full-length mirror. Tristan stared up at the mirror with growing confusion. Was this it? This was the prize? "Find me," the voice whispered again suddenly, this time with much more insistence. Tristan flinched at the sound, as it was louder than ever before, and it sounded as if it came from the mirror. This time, now he was so close, Tristan recognized the voice. It was his own, speaking out of the mirror with urgency. The hairs on his arms and the back of his neck stood on end as Tristan stared with wide eyes at the mirror. The surface seemed to shimmer like a small pond, reflecting the light of a full moon. Tristan slowly moved closer, unblinking as he climbed onto the stone platform and stepped in front of the mirror. When he looked at his reflection, Tristan gasped. Where his reflection should have been, there was instead a strange yet familiar face. The old man from the office, who had encouraged Tristan on this adventure, stood in the mirror, looking out at Tristan with a hard and hungry gaze. "Hey, young blood, you found me," the old man said with a grin. He spoke with Tristan's voice. "What? How?" Tristan stammered. What's happening?" Tristan suddenly felt an ice-cold sensation grip his chest. He gasped from the shock of it and clutched a hand to his heart as he stumbled, almost falling to his knees. Glancing up, he saw the old man in the mirror begin to change. His white hair began to fill with color, becoming light brown and thick. The wrinkles on his face began to fade, and his skin became smooth. Tristan looked down at his hands, and his breath caught in his throat. His skin was shriveling before his eyes, the color draining fast, his fingers curling like brittle twigs. His veins pressed against thin and papery skin, his hands weak and trembling. "Help!" Tristan croaked, looking up at the old man in the mirror. But the old man didn't look old anymore. As Tristan stared, finally falling to his knees as his legs suddenly became too frail, he saw that the old man had become more youthful in only moments, becoming decades younger. What truly horrified Tristan, though, was the old man's new youthful face. It was his own. Tristan reached up and touched his face with trembling fingers. He felt his cheeks had hollowed out, and the skin around his neck and jawline seemed to hang loose from his bones. "Sorry, young blood," the man in the mirror said with Tristan's voice, now wearing Tristan's face. "You should have looked for yourself. The road not taken. Am I right?" Tristan felt a sudden invisible force begin to pull him towards the mirror. He screamed and clawed at the stone platform beneath him, trying desperately to find something to grab hold of. Tristan felt himself being dragged towards the mirror, and he screamed even louder, his eyes bulging out of his suddenly ancient face. He tried to crawl away, but the invisible force was too strong, and his now aged body too weak. Looking back, Tristan stared in horror as his feet touched the mirror, but instead of hitting glass, they simply vanished inside, as if he had sunk his feet into a dark ocean. Screaming even louder, Tristan thrashed and tried to pull himself free. He desperately tried to grab hold of something. He dug his fingers into any crack in the stones he could find. His fingernails snapped off as he was dragged with irresistible force, leaving thin trails of blood on the stone as he continued to claw for help. The man in the mirror, who now looked exactly like Tristan had, watched as Tristan slowly sank into the mirror. Tristan screamed the whole while, thrashing and clawing at the ground as first he sank into the mirror up to his knees, then his waist. Tristan still screamed and flailed when he was in up to his chest. Finally, the screaming stopped as Tristan's head vanished into the mirror, though one hand still protruded through the mirror, bloody and frail, searching wildly for something to grab onto, until even that had gone. Once the labyrinth's courtyard was silent once more, the man who had taken Tristan's visage pressed his hands on his side of the mirror and pushed, emerging easily from the mirror and stepping out into the cool air. He turned around and looked back into the mirror, admiring his reflection. With a smirk, the man smoothed out his new hair. He then looked down at the ground and saw the ancient map. With a grin, the man reached down and picked it up and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he turned and walked away, whistling casually as he vanished into the darkness. Well, beyond the fence. I'm gonna take a freight train, down at the station, Lord. I don't care where it goes. Gonna climb a mountain, the highest mountain. I'll jump off, nobody gonna know. The Marshall Tucker Band. I'm so angry. I did my best. I really did. That road from the army base where we live now, running out west towards that looted Costo outlet near Corvallis, is littered with abandoned cars and trucks, all rusting out, tires flat, gas tank lids and caps open. I know all the places where you have to go off-road to get around them, but there are always things you just can't predict. The law of unintended consequences, they call it. That's what happened to me, I guess. I became an unintended consequence. I don't know. Maybe that's not right. I'm not thinking very clearly right now. Molly, too, my Staffordshire Terrier. She was an unintended consequence as well, maybe. I guess. I felt worse about her in the end, honestly. I loved Molly so much. Those little fuckers. I hate them so much, and now I am them. The old Toyota 4Runner was running pretty smooth despite the degraded quality of the fuel that was left to us, and it only bogged down on me a few times during the drive, but never stalled out. When I reached the parking lot, I came to a stop by the loading docks, like always. I grabbed the cut-down Remington 12-gauge and stuffed the box of pumpkin balls into my jacket pocket. Normally, I would have left the driver's side door open, but I had to keep Molly inside. I certainly wasn't bringing her in there. The rear door to the Costco was still propped open, just like it always is, and I found the battered old orange hand truck sitting right there in the corner, just like it always is. Things looked much as they always did. I couldn't hear anything, but I still kept the shotgun pointed directly ahead of me as I entered the store floor from the back room. I clicked on the small flashlight mounted to the barrel with some electrical tape and squinted into the darkness. I waited 15 seconds, then another 15, and then I entered. I left the hand truck right there and proceeded very slowly. It was my turn to do this today, and I never argued against it when my turn came. But Kaylee was my only remaining child, and I had to get back to her. I was in no big rush. I simply had to do my job and get back. I'm just so angry now. I really messed this up. I took a can of baked beans off the closest shelf and threw it as far as I could down one of the aisles, and then I shuffled back a few steps to see what would happen, listening for the sound of footsteps, ready to run if there were too many. I heard nothing. I waited 15 seconds, then another 15, and then I moved forward. A short time later, I had the first load of supplies stacked up on the hand truck. I left it there and checked the back room again with the flashlight beam on my shotgun, and then checked the back parking lot for a moment just to make sure everything was cool out there too. Seeing nothing of concern, I hauled the first load of supplies out and loaded them into the back of the 4Runner as quietly as possible. When I returned, I took all of the same precautions. I made no assumptions, but again, everything seemed clear, so I went ahead and gathered up the rest of the supplies. In the end, I had canned foods, batteries, bottled water and juice, toilet paper, napkins, Tylenol, garbage bags, t-shirts, vitamins, and a few other things. There wasn't very much left at that Costco by that point, but we didn't go much further into the more previously populated urban areas until it became truly necessary. Again, I checked the back room and the parking lot before I hauled the hand truck out through the loading dock door and placed everything in the back of the old Toyota SUV as quietly as possible. Then I heard the sound of something being knocked over, coming through the rear door of the Costco outlet. It sounded metallic, maybe a bucket or a garbage pail being tipped over, or something like that. I pointed my shotgun in that direction for a second, and then jumped into the driver's seat of the Toyota and drove off. I had what I came for, and Molly was barking like crazy. It would take at least 5 or 6 hours, maybe more, to get back to the base, and I had already traveled at least that same amount of time, just getting there earlier that day. I would definitely have to refuel from the tanks in the back soon. I was ready to push on through, but when it started raining, I knew it would take much longer, and it would be much more dangerous. I had to rethink my plans. I knew a place. It was more important that I just got back to Kaylee than getting back right away. I knew she would be scared if I didn't return that night, but that's obviously better than not returning at all. My sister Amy would comfort her as much as possible. I wasn't looking forward to my night either, but Amy would take care of her until I got there with the supplies. Like I said, I knew a place. It was just past a highway exit sign for Langhorne Avenue. That sign has a red letter X spray painted across it. Everyone knows what that means. Just past that exit, along the side of the road just before you reach Redmond, there is a little sleep spot we sometimes use when we have to. It is proven safe. It used to be a small electrical substation, just a little 8x12 steel structure, about 10 feet tall, that once housed some power transmission equipment. At some point, someone gutted it out, and you can still see the old components rusting there, just outside of the door, the tall grass growing up through the cracks. I pulled the Toyota around in front of that old substation, but I kept the engine running, and I stayed inside for a little while and used my binoculars to search the surrounding area for signs of movement. The sky was gray and the sun was setting, but I saw nothing of concern, so eventually I grabbed the shotgun and my travel bag and got out of the SUV as cautiously and quietly as possible. I left the driver's side door open, despite the light rain. I didn't want to make any unnecessary noise, and if I needed to make a quick escape, that could make the difference. Once Molly and I were inside that old substation, I quickly closed the door behind me and dropped the zip-tie bundled rebar bolts into place. Then I stood there by the door for a while, holding my shotgun, but I didn't hear anything outside, and eventually I relaxed a bit. They don't like the rain, but you never really know. The filthy old mattress was a welcome sight. I sat there as I ate a cold can of Chef Boyardee raviolis. They were so delicious, and I took my time. It was a treat. I had dog food and water for Molly too. She was happy as well. Afterwards, I laid my sleeping bag out on the mattress, and Molly and I fell asleep to the fading sound of rain pattering off the steel roof. It was nice. A few hours later, I was awoken by the sound of Molly's growling and barking. She was standing by the door, and I could hear the sounds of screaming and scratching coming from the other side. I grabbed my shotgun and pulled Molly back, breathing heavily, hoping the door would hold. I checked the rebar bolts. The door seemed solid. After a while, the rain picked up. The violent sounds coming from outside faded away, and then I set the shotgun down and returned to the bed. It was hard to find sleep again. I stared up into the darkness for a while. It was just over 3 years ago when it all began. A facility in the woods of northern Montana where they housed and performed tests on children who had been exposed to experimental biochemical weapons in various locations around the world. Things were fine there until they were not. The confused and sometimes conflicting news reports at the time mostly said that there was an antivirus that was administered to those kids on a daily basis. But one day the supplies ran out. Then, by the next morning, that facility was overrun. Blood and gore. The fences went down. But what no one knew until then was that it was contagious. Most people past the age of adolescence quickly succumb to it, but not everyone. No one really knows why. It all happened very quickly, and then it was all over, and I mean all of it. Everything. The world is very different now. This part of the world, anyway. I really don't know what it's like elsewhere. We don't receive news reports anymore. I eventually fell asleep and woke up a few hours later with Molly cuddled up by my side. I fed her some kibble for breakfast, and then I ate a granola bar and drank a bottle of water and packed up my gear. I looked out through the 2 small peepholes before leaving the safety of the substation with Molly by my side. The rain had stopped, but it was still gray and cloudy. I guess I made a little too much noise unbolting and opening the door. As soon as we stepped outside, I heard the clattering from behind the substation and on the low rooftop overhead. They must have just waited out there all night. I didn't know they were capable of that. I thought they just retreated back into the woods once they quit the hunt. Molly paid the price, not me. I hate myself for that. I hate myself. When they pounced, I fired my shotgun twice and blasted 2 of them in the chest and put them down. Both teenage boys, stark naked and filthy, with elongated nails and teeth, long straggly hair, moving with predatory speed. Unfortunately, there were 3 more who fell on Molly. 2 adults and a kid. I was about to take another shot, but they were all over her. And trust me, she was fighting back like a fucking monster. But I just saw no way to not hit her as well. After a few seconds, I realized she would soon be dead anyway. So I just unloaded my remaining 4 shells and killed them all, including Molly. I was so angry, but I started crying right away. I'm still enraged. They made me kill Molly, those little fuckers. As I was making my way to the driver's side door of the Toyota with my head down and staring at the grass through my tear-blurred vision, that's when the last one got me. He was just a little kid, maybe 10 years old. Perhaps that's why he held back when the others rushed in. I don't know. Who can say? Who knows how they think? I guess I will know soon enough. It's already starting. He came around from the back of the lift gate and dove at me and bit me on my forearm. There was only the one quick bite before I turned around and smashed him in the forehead with the butt of my Remington. But as soon as I got into the forerunner and closed the door, I could see that he had drawn blood. I wiped it off with my bandana and poured some rubbing alcohol on it. I was scared, but I still had some hope. I had my fingers crossed, but I still had some hope. That hope faded quickly along the drive back to the base. I feel sick now. I feel very sick, and it's just getting worse. My head is starting to pound, and I feel like I might need to vomit. My teeth and gums and my fingernails and toenails are all starting to ache. My vision is changing, and my throat is dry. I'm starting to make some involuntary growling sounds, and I cannot stop gripping the steering wheel with all of the strength in my hands. I want to just get out of the Toyota and run. It doesn't even matter where. I was planning to just drop off these supplies by the front gates of the base and then leave. But it's still at least a 2-hour drive, and I am afraid of who or what I will be by the time I get there. I think I have to just turn around right now and drive in the opposite direction for as long as I possibly can. I have reloaded the Remington, and I am keeping it handy. I am sweating and drooling pretty hard now. I can't help it. My clothes are also starting to feel extremely uncomfortable. I think I might need to pull over and remove my shirt and boots soon. Maybe my jeans too. I don't think I can take this too much longer. I keep looking at the woods along the side of the road. I just want to run off into the trees. I want to scream. I want to eat something while it is still breathing. Mostly, I just want to end this before it gets worse. I know that I will never see Kaylee again, and even more than what happened to Molly, that's what makes me feel so sick. I'm sure my sister Amy will take good care of her, but still, I just feel so sick. I keep looking at the woods and at the Remington. I just have to keep driving for a little bit longer now. The radio stations all went dark years ago, and there's only one stupid old CD stuck inside the dashboard stereo in this Toyota for me to listen to as I drive, the Marshall Tucker Band. So I turn it up. What else am I going to do? The hum of the motor is hurting my head, and the lyrics seem right. I'm gonna find me a hole in the wall. I'm gonna crawl inside and die. But no, I don't think so. That would be too easy. I think I'm gonna die with my boots on, and I'm definitely gonna bring some of you little bastards with me. Get ready to eat some of these 12-gauge pumpkin balls. It's not going to be pretty. I'm gonna cut some of you little demons in half while I still can. As many of you as possible until my ammo runs out. I owe that much to Kaylee and Molly and Amy and all of the others. I see a red letter X spray painted on the exit sign up ahead. I'll be there soon. You'll know when I arrive, you little fuckers. Trust me, you'll know. Summer 1992. 7th cup. The tea still works, even though it shifts and alters more than it should. My skin is tighter. I feel it around my chin and my collarbones, but it takes curious forms here and there, either too smooth or too sharp. The first time it happened, I barely noticed. I was blinded by relief, youth. I don't recognize my own reflection anymore. Now my patience wears thin where it once stretched long. My thoughts move too quickly, and my moods shift without warning. The hours of morning I used to cherish agitate me. It's like I'm trapped in time, not freed from it. Next time I'll use more leaves, just to make sure. The walls were covered with vines that followed the delicate pattern of bricks, seeping through gaps in the mortar and peeking inside like intruders. The house stood like a forgotten relic, with its green tapestry of tendrils creeping along the windowsills, curling around the hinges and swaying gently in the breeze. Some vines had grown so thick they formed a canopy over the sagging porch, casting shifting shadows on the creaking wooden floors. On the side, the chimney peeked out from the greenery, barely visible beneath the stubborn embrace of ivy. It was a house where nature had reclaimed its place, where the edges of time were blurred and cloudy. At the start of spring, the lilies flowered, and through the door left ajar you could see a bouquet placed carefully on the table. If you turned right, through the air that carried the earthy scents of the vines, you would find yourself in the parlor, where furniture sat like forgotten ghosts of another era. An armchair draped with quilt, a table so old its scratches looked like wrinkles, books with cracked spines and yellowed pages scattered across a shelf leaning slightly to one side. Moss clung to the edges of the fireplace. From here, you'd go through one of the two doors and end up in either the bedroom or the kitchen. The bed, centered in the middle of the room, had chipped paint coming off its iron frame. The blend of abandonment and charm that was the kitchen had mismatched jars of spices and dried herbs lined on shelves, and next to the sink, a cast iron kettle that rested on a stove, pulsing with a strange vitality. Its lid always seemed to breathe with soft metallic sighs, an ancient creature that seemed to know every secret whispered within the house. This altered slice of forest belonged entirely to Dorothy, an old lady whose only company was the house itself. Dorothy had lived there for as long as anyone could remember, a quiet but constant presence on the edge of the world. Her wiry frame, draped in shawls, moved slowly through the vine-covered walls, her hands always stained with the green of crushed herbs or brewed teas. Depending on who told the story, she might have been a herbalist, a healer, or even a witch. But for those who didn't like to indulge in the grasps of fiction, she was just a lonely old woman. The solace she found in nature helped her cope with the sadness and grief brought by age. Her thoughts often spiraled into the past, replaying moments from her youth that were long gone. The forest became her refuge, a place where her grief felt less sharp, where she could lose herself in the rustling of leaves overhead. It made her feel small in the most comforting sense, like a child again, cradled by something much larger than herself. Each time she was surrounded by the vibrant green and the hum of insects, she felt life and youth pumping through her veins. It made something inside her ache, deep and primal. It was as if she wanted to consume the forest whole, swallow its wildness and vitality, and fill the hollow place within her that grief had carved. In this warm embrace, she could almost forget all the heaviness she carried. Almost. April 23rd, 1952. First cup. I don't know what to expect. Perhaps a little more energy, an ease in my joints. I can see the plant standing outside my window, unfazed, as if it didn't just surrender something so life-changing to me. I don't expect miracles, because that would be foolish. If I wake up tomorrow and feel the way I did 10 years ago, even 5. Dorothy was at that age when even the slightest noise troubled her sleep. So when she heard the soft, almost rhythmic rustling, she got up immediately. It wasn't the sharp sound of wind, nor the familiar clattering of branches or leaves carried on the breeze. She stretched, her eyes still heavy with sleep, and gazed out through a gap in the curtains. There, growing just outside the window, was a plant nestled against the weathered stone wall, claiming the place as if it had always belonged. Except it didn't, the old woman thought. Its presence felt almost magical, with white blossoms that stood out like tiny stars, delicate and almost too perfect. Dorothy got her shawl and went outside to get a better look. The closer she stepped, the quicker her heart beat. She knelt down, her fingers brushing the leaves lightly. The plant had a quiet elegance and an earthy scent so familiar, she almost didn't notice the subtle, sweet fragrance that lingered in the breeze. The plant seemed to hum with life beneath her touch. It called to her. Was it a gift? An omen? As Dorothy pulled her hand away from the plant, she felt an odd, sudden shift. Something within her had been gently untangled. She looked down at her palm, and, instead of the familiar creases that had accumulated over the years, she saw skin so smooth, almost unmarked, as if just that part of her body had slipped away in time. The wrinkles, the evidence of age that had clung to her like a malady for so long, had vanished, replaced by the soft texture that she hadn't known in decades. In the stillness of night, Dorothy couldn't help but wonder, had the plant done more than just grow? Had it reached into her and drawn something out, something almost rotten? And if yes, could it do it again? A strange surge of impulse swept over her. She reached toward one of its thick, twisting branches, curled her fingers around it, and, with a sudden determination and strength, snapped it off. The leaves rustled in protest, but the plant itself made no other sound, no objection, no struggle. Start off by boiling the water, 4 cups over medium-high heat, which you then pour over about 1 tablespoon of leaves and steep to the desired strength before straining. The quantity of leaves influences the end result. Taste, smell, years turned back, so beware. Add sugar, if needed, and stir until completely dissolved. Pour into a cup and drink. She set the teapot on the table and rested her hands on the worn surface. The silence in the room seemed to stretch, as though the whole house was holding its breath. When she poured the hot liquid into her cup, the smell was sweet and inviting. Before lifting the cup to her lips, she let her gaze drift back to the smooth skin of her palm. It seemed impossible, and for a second, she thought it might all be a dream, a mirage created by her sleeping self. But there it was again, the freshness of youth staring back at her, all too real. As she took her first slow sip, the light of dawn crept through the curtains, casting a pale, golden glow across the room. A ray of sunlight slipped past the table, past the jars with their faded labels covered in a layer of dust, and kissed the edge of the cup. After downing its contents, Dorothy couldn't help but smile. Years passed. The world shifted and reshaped itself. Time had forgiven nobody. It shed its old skin and kept emerging in a new form, always moving forward. Seasons marked their passing in the slow dance between life, death, and rebirth. The forest stirred from its slumber each spring, deepened its song in summer, caught its breath in autumn, and went to sleep at last, in winter. Outside Dorothy's house, the plant stood tall, its leaves shimmering in the sunlight, vibrant and green. It didn't wither in the cold or droop in the heat, and while the trees around it shed their leaves, the plant turned a deeper shade of green, as if to mock the cycle of decay that governed everything else. Something so human, so terrestrial, this idea of age, was never a threat to its well-being. Dorothy had witnessed these changes through both joy and sorrow. She was always there, a still point in a spinning universe. Each time she plucked a fresh leaf, she felt a rush of vitality fill her, the years peeling away from her skin. Her reflection showed a face far younger than she had any right to possess. 1 cup, 2 cups, 3, 20, 100. It was easy to lose track of time. The cycle of day and night became meaningless. Days and hours and minutes were nothing compared to the eternity locked behind her eyes. Instead, Dorothy would measure the passing of time by watching the plant diminish before her eyes, wondering how long it had left before turning into withered twigs. Would it one day simply stop growing altogether? Would she steal its essence until they both shrank, one no longer thriving at the other's expense? 132nd cup. I used to think highly of the plant, how time doesn't affect its leaves or flowers, but I'm not so sure anymore. The tea makes my stomach turn. I drink it anyway. What's the alternative? But every sip feels like a chore. I miss the sweet taste it once had. I don't even want to think about the possibility of it dying. Maybe it already is, and I just don't let myself see. The earth beneath Dorothy's feet was dry and cracked, reflecting nothing but decay. Around her, the world was lifeless. Even the birds, creatures that had once filled the mornings with their song, had long since vanished. Only silence remained. At the center of this desolation stood the plant, at least what was left of it. Its branches were brittle and twisted, no longer covered by the lush leaves that had once crowned it in green splendor. Dorothy knelt before it one last time, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch the withered frame. She could feel it, the final breath of life, and she knew in the ache of her bones, in the faint lines that had begun to reappear on her hands yet again, that this would be all over at last. Time, it seemed, had finally caught up to her, and yet she couldn't resist taking this one more gift. Carefully, she plucked the final few leaves from the plant's skeletal frame, thin and fragile like paper soaked in water. In the kitchen, she lit the fire and set the battered kettle on the stove. The water boiled slowly, keeping the moment alive for just a while longer, this last ritual that she was unwilling to let go of. She dropped the leaves into the cup, watching as they unfurled, filling the air with the earthy scent tinged with a faint bitterness she couldn't recall. It smelled of death. She carried the cup back to the garden, standing among the ruins of her once vibrant wood, the plant motionless behind her. She hesitated for a moment before raising the cup to her lips and drinking slowly. The warmth spread through her body, but the feeling was different this time. Heavier, less vibrant. Her hands did not change. The lines on her face remained. The tea had nothing left to give. Behind her, the plant made a soft, cracking sound, and when she turned, she saw it collapse in on itself. Its branches curled inward. Its roots shrank, pulling away from the earth until there was nothing left but a blackened patch of soil. It was gone, completely gone. As Dorothy stood in the silent, dead garden, she felt a strange sensation stir within her chest, faint at first, and then growing stronger, deeper, spreading through her body like the vines on the house. When she clutched her arms, panic rising in her throat, she felt her skin softening, thinning, veins emerging beneath the surface like the ridges of a leaf. Her legs trembled, and she fell to her knees, the cracked earth beneath pressing into her bones. She couldn't rise back up no matter how hard she tried. She was shrinking, folding into herself, rooting into the soil as if she was being claimed by it. Swallowed. Her hair began to tangle and grow wild, sprouting into long, twisting vines that cascaded down her back and over her shoulders. She wanted to scream, but her words cut off, muffled by the sound of creaking wood emerging from her throat. It was as though the forest was taking back the very life she had drained from the plant over centuries. She had stolen, and now she would give. That was her last thought before her human form erased itself completely. Dorothy stands now, elegant and tall, her her branches twisted upward toward the pale sky. She gave up on trying to regain her human beauty, but she mourns it still, while her leaves are swaying gently in the wind. From a distance, she appears flawless, a vibrant plant in contrast to the barren garden. As you get closer, though, you start to notice the rot and ruin on the tips of her leaves, how they curl inwards as if, in their attempt to grow, they lost their strength halfway. They whisper of a decay she cannot escape, no matter how deeply her roots have sunk into the soil. The gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent, and easy is the way. Virgil. They all just sat there in the heat, and they waited. The kid came back. He was walking down the platform with his head hung low, sweat running down his pimpled face, like always. He was 16, but looked more like 13, short and skinny, with longish dark hair and a black eye. The black eye was always there. It never faded. He took a seat at the end of the bench with the others and looked down at his dirty old sneakers. Roman. Same shit, little man? The kid. Yeah. Roman. I don't know why you even bother no more. They all just sat there in silence. Sandra. It's so hot today. 3 of them looked at her. Roman. Bitch. It's hot out here every day. Sandra. I told you not to call me that. Colonel Duval. Roman, please. Roman gave a tiny chuckle and pulled the pack of Newports from his pocket and lit one up. That pack was always near to full. He exhaled some smoke and looked down the tracks into the distance where the rails slowly bent off into the trees and out of sight. Sandra wrinkled her nose and waved the smoke away. Roman. Man, when this train gonna come? Brian. Why do you always ask that same question over and over? Roman. Yo, man. I already done told you to bite your tongue and stay over there, you strange-ass bitch. Don't make me get up. It's too hot for me to whip your ass right now, you silly-looking motherfucker. They all just sat there in silence. Colette fanned herself with the folded newspaper, looked down the tracks, and then handed it to the colonel, who did the same. Roman took one last drag on his cigarette and then flicked it at Brian seated at the end of the bench, bouncing it off his jeans and leaving a small horsetail of orange sparks in the air as it fell to the platform. Brian did not respond at all. Roman chuckled. The kid. I'm gonna take a walk. Roman. Seriously, man? Again? Is you retarded? The kid. Fuck off. I'm gonna take a walk. You can come with me if you want. Roman. Nah, man. I'm good, shorty. You go off and wander. I'll be cooling it right here when you get back. The kid walked off down the platform towards the exit stairs, giving Roman, or maybe all of them, the finger with his right hand held over his narrow shoulders as he departed, not looking back. As he passed the thermometer mounted on the wall, the temperature read 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Always 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Always. Colette. Can someone remind me how he got here? I know he's told me, but I just can't remember. Sandra. Me neither. They all just quietly sat there in the heat for a while, Roman looking down the tracks every minute or two. He lit another Newport from the bottomless pack. Colette and Sandra both squinted and waved the smoke away. Brian looked up at the sky. Brian. How come the sun never sets? Colette. Sandra. I forgot how you got here too. I know we've discussed this before, but I just can't seem to remember these things. Sandra. I came home from a business trip early one day and found the car that belongs to my husband's 24-year-old secretary blocking the driveway. When I entered the house, I could immediately hear the sounds coming from the bedroom. I went to the stove and blew out the pilot light and turned up the gas. Then I lit a few candles on the dining room table, left the house, and drove my car halfway down the block and watched as it went up in flames a little while later. It's sad that my baby Jason was there in his crib at the time, but I really didn't want to be a single mother. That was in 1972. What year is this? Colette. Oh, that's right. That's just awful. Roman. Yo, do y'all ever plan to shut the fuck up? Making my head hurt over here. Colonel Duval. Roman. I must politely ask you once again to mind your language when speaking with the women. Roman gave him an angry stare and then flicked his cigarette butt out onto the tracks and used his black bandana to wipe the sweat off his forehead. Brian. Are we ever going to get any food? When is the food coming? I'm hungry. Colette. I don't think we can get food here. Sandra. Colette. I forgot how you got here too. What awful thing did you do? Please remind me. Colette gave her an aggrieved stare for a moment, and then revealed a broad smile and answered in a flowery and friendly tone that could not have been less sincere. Colette. I didn't do anything awful, Sandra. Nothing like what you did. Your own child. Unthinkable. No. All I did was fulfill my Lord and Savior's will. When I was working in the hospital, if I saw in a patient's chart that she previously murdered an unborn child, well, I carried out God's will. I did this 6 times before they caught me. I wish it was 6,000. Sandra. I'm an atheist. Colette laughed during her brief reply. Colette. This is probably not the best place for you to cling to that silly notion, dummy. Sandra. Go fuck yourself, Colette. They all went silent for a while. The heat was oppressive. There was no shade. There was no breeze. Brian. When are we going to get something to eat? Colonel Duval. Son, I've been here far longer than any of you. I assure you, there will be no meals served. Brian. Well, we all need water. Will we get some water at some point? The colonel ignored this query. After a while, Roman spoke up. Roman. Yo, old man. Remind me how you got here. Colonel Duval. I was in the war. At Antietam, we captured some rebel soldiers and we needed information about troop locations, numbers, armaments, that sort of intelligence. We did things to them to ensure that we got that information quickly, but later I was court-martialed and they hanged my commanding officer and myself in Washington for our war crimes. It was quite the scandal at that time. Roman. Antietam? Where that at, man? Iraq? Colonel Duval. No, son. That's in Maryland. Can you please remind me how you got here? I'm sorry. My memory is not what it once was. Roman. Shot a few niggas. Colonel Duval. Excuse me, son? Can you repeat that? Roman. Yeah, I shot a few niggas just down the block from where I stay in Washington Heights. I've been running that corner for 3 years, and one day these little bitches show up and just set up shop and start serving my customers. It wasn't something I had to think about much. Shit. I also hit a delivery man bringing some cases of beer into the bodega on that corner, but I didn't mean to do that. He was just in that wrong place at the wrong time. Then I shot it out with the NYPD. It was pretty quick. I caught a few in my back and one in my neck. Anyways, man, that's how I got here. He pointed at the scar on his neck and then lit another cigarette. The kid was walking back down the platform, his olive drab green U.S. Army t-shirt heavily stained with sweat. The thermometer read 117 degrees Fahrenheit as always. Sandra, can someone remind me how he got here? I can't seem to remember these things for long, for some reason. Colette, I don't recall either, but I'm sure he didn't burn his child to death. Sandra shot an angry look back at her, scowled and looked away, crossing her arms over her chest. Roman looked down the tracks. Sandra. Fuck you, Colette. Colette smiled smugly. Roman. Man, when this train gonna come? Sandra. I do feel really bad about my son, Jason. I just didn't know what else to do in that moment. That's why I drove to the bridge afterwards. The kid took a seat at the end of the bench. Sandra. Hey kid, I'm sorry. Can you please remind us how you got here? The kid. I took my dad's pistol to school, and I shot a few bullies and this one asshole gym teacher. Then I shot myself. The kid never said very much. Roman. Same shit, little man? The kid. Yeah, I walked and ended up right back here, just like always. Felt like I was walking for 2 hours. Wish I had my iPhone. How long was I gone that time? Roman. I don't know, man. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. You see anything new? The kid. Number. It doesn't matter which way I go. It's just a long, empty road, and then I pass by an empty high school that looks just like mine, and then I end up back here. He stared down at his dirty old sneakers. Colette. Maybe next time you should stop in that school and take some geography classes. She laughed at her own joke, and the kid shot her a grave look. Sandra did too. Sandra. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is other people." I think he was right. Sandra crossed her arms over her chest and looked away. Colette. How did you get here, Brian? Brian. I already told you. I took 17 women between 1985 and 1992 before I was arrested. Mostly prostitutes. Then I was on death row down in Huntsville for about 14 years until I ran out of appeals. Are they going to bring us any food? They all went silent for a while and stewed in the heat of the brutal, unyielding sun. After a few minutes, Roman looked down the tracks. Roman. Man, when this train gonna come? Colonel Duval. I wouldn't be in such a rush, son. Roman. Oh yeah, why dat? Colonel Duval paused and looked at the tracks running off in the opposite direction, towards the desert, before looking back at Roman. Colonel Duval. Well, son, we don't know where that train is going to take us, do we? He paused for another moment and stared off towards the desert again. He spoke without looking back this time. He spoke quietly. Colonel Duval. Maybe this is the best part. What if it only gets worse from here? What if this is just the beginning? Roman lit another cigarette and then turned away and quietly stared in the other direction, down the tracks to the point where the rails bent off and disappeared beyond the trees. He exhaled, and the smoke drifted down the bench towards the others. They all sat there and waited for the train. Eventually, the kid took another walk and then returned a short time later, drenched in sweat. Brian remained hungry. Colette and Sandra refused to look at one another. The colonel had a solemn cast to his face, and Roman continued to reach into his endless pack of cigarettes. The temperature was 117 degrees Fahrenheit. They all just sat there in the heat, and they waited. O unholy night! Iceland's winter festivities are a perfect excuse to feast and make merry, and I partake with an insatiable appetite. I adore the endless nights wandering abroad and relish chance encounters with hapless stragglers trudging home. They all laugh when I tell them, carol singing's not to my taste, and chuckle when I say, choristers are delightful and sweet. But how their mirth dissolves as I envelop them in my cloak and whisper, what a toothsome treat you are. You're good enough to eat. I despise summer, like all cold-blooded creatures, preferring a catatonic sleep to roasting in the sun. Every autumn, I anticipate the evening when Ingvar disturbs my estivation, and I return to a nocturnal lifestyle. He disinterrs my casket from the family plot every year during the first week of December. It's a tradition my loyal retainer has followed for years, just like his father and his father's father, ad infinitum. It's impossible to find reliable help these days. And so, despite Ingvar's poor social skills, I re-employ his services annually. Ingvar obeys my written orders to the letter on the pain of death. If not in this life, then his neck. Thwack, crunch. My mind basks in a dream state when Ingvar invades my solitude, hacking through the icebound earth above. Crake, skreek. I hear the shovel scrape debris off the wooden lid, and his doleful voice murmuring a tuneless refrain. The unsettling melody stirs my clouded mind like a moorland breeze whistling through gnarled branches. Its clashing dissonances offend my refined musical sensibilities and cause my heart to quiver and contract. Lub, dub, lub, dub, lub, dub. My constricted arteries dilate as Ingvar wrenches at the coffin nails with his claw hammer. His frenzied efforts cause minor explosions in the darkness, dusting the threadbare silk lining with clouds of grit. As Ingvar prizes open the ancient pine lid, my sensitive eyeballs roll upwards, avoiding the moon's inquisitive gaze. My rib cage twitches in a violent spasm as wheezing lung sacs inhale clean air. I choke and splutter before coughing out stale fumes that rasp my withered throat like a rusty file. With each heartbeat, blood churns throughout my aching body, carrying oxygen to every cell. It's always the most painful part of my awakening. Pins and needles prickle each desiccated sinew, and every limb screams as it receives life-giving fluid. The blood returns to the heart after delivering oxygen, and my mind explodes with predatory thoughts anew. My throbbing heart sends the blood to lungs that strain hard to collect more air. I reflux and retch a pint of sticky phlegm from deep down. Ingvar is used to this unsightly reaction and tends to the detritus with a clean cloth. His caring touch is delicate and professional, and his face is unflinching. He lacks any sentiment. This is his business. Ingvar had strict instructions prior to my exhumation. He was to source a flask of fresh blood by whatever means necessary. The task never varies, but the source depends whereabouts I resume my existence. We're never in the same town twice, for obvious reasons. He's learned to adapt to my circumstances with undeniable efficiency. Ingvar has my best interests at heart, and he's also on the payroll. This winter season, he's moored our vessel in a quiet northwestern harbor outside Sudavik. It's an unassuming fishing town with a medical center and a venue for blood donors. Once on shore, he disguised himself and liberated a quart from their supply. It's a rich-looking concoction that will suffice for now. However, it's not the same as sinking my teeth into a warm jugular and slurping on the real deal. Ingvar steadies my quivering hands as I raise the glass container to my lips. I close my weary eyelids, and after a few sips, everything calms down. My sweaty palms dry out, and my prune-like fingers appear to elongate as my skin tightens. The sagging flesh under my jaw disappears, and my furrowed brow loses its careworn lines. At last, the throbbing pain behind my eyeballs dissipates, and my labored breathing settles into a regular rhythm. My once erratic heart beat chugs at a steady rate, and the queasiness in my stomach eases after a discharge of rancid gas. My rejuvenation is complete, and I rise from the coffin to assume my full height, like a magnificent butterfly casting off its shriveled chrysalis and unfurling its wings before flight. I nod at my retainer, and he tips his forelock and bows. I acknowledge his endeavors with a satisfied smile and survey the snowbound nightscape, glistening like an ocean of diamonds under the moon's bashful glow. Ingvar wafts his left hand through the air, shepherding me towards the waiting Broham with his outstretched right arm. Two majestic black drays snort white plumes from flared nostrils beside my handsome carriage. We take our seats as pristine snowflakes descend and settle on the bodywork's polished ebony. It's a fine welcome and a tremendous relief to be undead once more. The sight of my baleful old vehicle cantering through the small coastal town of Sudavik draws little attention. In previous years, the ominous rumble of hooves and creaking coach springs would herald an unfamiliar guest. But the inhabitants have other issues this year. They've entombed themselves within their homes, battened down their pine window shutters, and laced their thresholds with wreaths of protective herbs, ensuring plenty of garlics on hand. It should flatter me they fear the visit of a malevolent nocturnal predator. However, the precautions aren't for my sole benefit. The coronavirus's arrival has influenced behavior, and the government has enforced a lockdown. Ingvar understood there were unusual circumstances this year, but thought it prudent to interrupt my deep slumbers. Regardless, my initial reaction was one of joy. What better return could I expect than to discover piles of bodies waiting to be devoured? However, it transpires that the Health and Safety Department has issued an edict. Local undertakers are to dispose of the corpses through the crematorium. The local council is determined to sanitize the town and cleanse the region. I hadn't connected the hazy fog lingering above the coastline with the current climate of dread. Sudovic's furnaces are working overtime to dispose of the deceased. The impact on my festive plans is catastrophic. Citizens locked away in their homes until further notice. No bodies languishing on mortuary slabs waiting for morticians, and funerals performed in secrecy with the bereaved attending by Zoom. None of these scenarios bode well for a creature of my particular inclinations. I'll need to redraft Ingvar's commands with caveats that cater to similar events. A do not resuscitate clause should cover matters in the future. As for now, we'll retreat to the mountains, and I'll ponder the options. Iceland's 13 days of celebrations leading up to Christmas are a disaster for all the residents. Children won't be leaving shoes beside their open bedroom windows. There'll be no trolls gifting trick-or-treats this year. The authorities have banned the Yule lads' nightly visits. It's a bleak prospect all round. I have some tough decisions to make as we ascend to my mountaintop fortress. Most years, I'd prowl along local shores, searching for lonesome visitors and lost souls. My spirit descends into a quagmire as I contemplate the prospect of scouring isolated fjords for bilious vagrants and ill-kempt vagabonds. It seems unlikely that I'll quench my thirst this winter. The locals have barricaded themselves in their homes, and according to Ingvar, they're low on stock at the blood bank. As the days trickle past, the wind howls like a wounded banshee, and the ground hardens to rock. The snows gather in drifts, blocking our descent and jeopardizing my strategic movements. Ingvar spends his days grooming the horses, and at night he sips his supplies of Brennivin. Most evenings, he passes out from its effects, having buried himself under a mountain of furs. He knows his services are not required during these hard times, despite being primed to chauffeur me down the mountain on a whim. I've endured centuries of this existence. Life is relative, of course. It isn't a life most know. It's punishment for cheating death. Centuries of endless torture in purgatory. I'm cursed to roam forever, fearful of daylight, and all for a few drops of blood. I suppose it could be worse. There's a contagious disease in the vicinity. I guess it'd just be my luck if I contracted the coronavirus, wouldn't it? A year of coughing and wheezing inside my casket is inconceivable. The thought is most unappealing. And so, it's time to call it a night. Ingvar must enter my coffin until the epidemic's over. Maybe my luck will improve next year.